Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button because we are unpacking Married at First Sight Mzansi every single week, and honey, this week's episode did not come to play. We have tears, we have tension, we have a grown man packing his suitcase like it's an Olympic sport, and we have receipts flying all over Twitter. So grab your tea, get comfortable, because today we are breaking down every single couple, and yes, we are going to spend a good chunk of this video talking about Prince, because that man is giving textbook narcissist behavior and I need you all to see it too. Let's start where the drama always seems to start this season, with Prince and his new bride. From the very first episode, something about Prince's energy felt off to me, and this week confirmed it. The two of them got into their first real disagreement after Prince decided it was appropriate to go through his wife's phone. Now listen, I understand that marriage is supposed to be built on openness, but you have known this woman for a matter of days. You do not get to treat her phone like it's a crime scene you're investigating. And of course, because he went looking for a problem, he found some old messages between his wife and someone from her past. Instead of asking calmly what he was looking at, he flipped the entire situation around and made himself the victim, accusing her of still having one foot out the door. Here's the thing about narcissistic behavior, and I want to break this down properly because a lot of people throw the word around without really explaining it. A narcissist doesn't take accountability. A narcissist flips the script so that they are always the wounded party, even when they are the one who caused the harm. And that is exactly what we watched happen. His wife tried to explain that the messages were old, that she had already closed that chapter of her life before the wedding, and instead of listening, Prince decided the best response was to pack a bag and storm out of the honeymoon suite. Not once. Not twice. This is officially strike 2 for suitcase behavior, and we are barely 2 episodes in. What really got me heated this week, though, was watching him call his own wife out of her name on national television. I don't care how frustrated you are in an argument, there is a way to disagree with your partner that does not involve degrading language, especially not in front of cameras and definitely not in front of millions of viewers. She did not deserve that, and honestly, the production team should have cut to commercial the second it happened, because watching her face in that moment was heartbreaking. Now let's talk about something that blew up completely outside of the show. Prince's ex-fiancée decided to speak her truth on social media this week, and baby, the timeline she laid out was rough. According to her posts, Prince allegedly left her stranded at a hotel just days before their own wedding was supposed to happen, choosing instead to go out on a date with someone else. When people online asked whether the two of them had tried to work things out afterwards, she claims that they did reconnect briefly, and that he told her privately he wasn't taking the show seriously and wanted to get back together with her instead. If even half of that is true, it paints a picture of a man who signed up for this experiment without any real intention of honoring it, which honestly explains a lot about the way he's been behaving with his actual wife on screen. She didn't stop there either. She described a bachelor party situation where Prince apparently disappeared until the early hours of the morning with his phone switched off, and when he eventually returned home, his reaction to being questioned was anger rather than an explanation. Whether every detail of her account is accurate is something only the people involved truly know, but patterns matter, and the pattern being described lines up disturbingly well with what viewers are already seeing play out with his current wife, the disappearing, the deflecting, the discomfort with being questioned at all. Let's shift gears, because as much as Prince deserves the heat, this episode had other couples worth talking about, starting with Matidiso and Liba. If you remember from the wedding episode, Liba was upfront about his lifestyle from day one, casually mentioning that he's dropped serious money on nights out at clubs. My first reaction honestly was to write this couple off completely, because a self-described party lifestyle and a woman looking to build a stable marriage don't always mix. But I have to give credit where it's due, their conversations this week were actually some of the most mature on the show. They sat down and talked seriously about logistics, about how they'd merge households, about splitting responsibilities, and Liebe even offered to hire help around the house so the load wouldn't fall on her shoulders alone. That's a green flag, not a red one, and it made me reconsider my earlier judgment. That said, old habits reared their head again this week. Liebe vanished for an entire night during a group outing the couples had with friends, only resurfacing the next morning with a story about a broken phone as his excuse for going dark. At some point, you have to ask, how does an adult man in his 30s, who claims he wants to be a present husband, keep finding himself in situations where he simply cannot be reached? It's giving unserious. And if there's one thing I'll say clearly, it's this: talking about commitment and living it out are two very different things, and Liebe still has some proving to do. There was also a moment circulating online this week that has fans convinced the two of them are still together well after filming Wrapped, based on footage showing them out together with her still wearing her ring. If that's accurate, it does suggest they made it through to the other side, which honestly gives me a bit of hope for them, even with the bumps we've seen. Nothing takes the suspense out of watching a season quite like an accidental spoiler, but hey, that's the price of being active on social media these days. Moving along to Nomsibo and Kulani, and I have really mixed feelings about this couple. On one hand, Nomsibo can come across a little guarded, even sharp at times, but when you consider that she lost both her parents young and grew up leaning on relatives rather than a nuclear family, that defensiveness starts to make a lot more sense. People who have had to fight for stability their whole lives don't always know how to soften once they're finally somewhere safe. On the other hand, Kulani has been showing some genuinely immature moments of his own. When the couple was asked about the intimacy side of their relationship, instead of giving a simple, respectful answer, he went ahead and told the group that Nomsibo was on her period, essentially outing private information that was not his to share. That is not okay, full stop. A grown man should know how to protect his partner's privacy, especially about something so personal. Then there was the cooking disagreement, which honestly frustrated me the most out of everything with these two. Kulani expressed that he was tired of ordering takeout and expected home-cooked meals, without it ever sounding like the two of them had an actual conversation establishing what kind of household dynamic they wanted. Marriage, especially one that starts as fast as this show forces it to, requires deliberate conversations about roles. Are we doing 50-50 on everything? Are we leaning traditional? Are we figuring out something entirely our own? You cannot simply assume your partner will slide into a role modeled after how you were raised. That's not fair to her, and it's not really fair to him either, because he's setting himself up for resentment if he never actually voices what he wants and works it out together with her. To Nomsibo's credit, when Kulani opened up emotionally about his mother's illness, that would have been the perfect moment for her to soften and offer comfort, and by her own admission, she froze instead of reaching out physically to hold him. I understand guarded people sometimes don't know how to respond to vulnerability, but this is exactly the muscle these two need to build if they want any shot at making it. There were sweet moments too, Kulani showing up with flowers and pain relief for her once he found out she wasn't feeling well, so I don't think this couple is doomed. I do think they're young, they're figuring themselves out in real time on camera, and with a little guidance they could genuinely grow into something solid. Now, let's talk about Aubrey and Larenda, because their conflict this week felt a little different from the others, less explosive, more of a slow simmer. Larenda's main complaint was that Aubrey has been glued to his phone throughout what's supposed to be their honeymoon period, the exact window meant for the two of them to actually get to know each other as strangers who are suddenly married. Aubrey pushed back, explaining that as a business owner, stepping away from his phone for an extended stretch isn't realistic without financial consequences. Both sides have a point here. Running a business doesn't pause because you're on a honeymoon, but a newlywed also has every right to ask for undivided attention during the small window designed specifically for bonding. I don't think Larenda is being unreasonable by voicing what she needs, and I don't think Aubrey is necessarily wrong either. This feels like a classic compatibility conversation that two strong-willed, independent people are going to need to keep having as they build trust. I do want to touch on something I saw floating around online, with some viewers suggesting Aubrey should have been matched with a different bride entirely. I have to push back on that a little, because from what he shared during the matching process, he was upfront about his preferences, and pairing him with someone he explicitly said he wasn't attracted to would not have set either person up for success. Compatibility on paper only works if attraction is part of the equation too, whether we love to admit that publicly or not. Finally, let's give some love to the couple that honestly hasn't given us a single headline this season, and in the best way possible, the pairing everyone is quietly rooting for because there's simply nothing messy to report. Their conversations have been calm, respectful, and forward-looking, discussing everything from how they picture their day-to-day life together to how they want to handle finances as a team. It's not the most dramatic story arc for a recap video, I'll admit, but it might be the healthiest thing on our screens this season, and sometimes boring is exactly what a successful marriage looks like. So here's where I land after this episode. Married at First Sight Mzansi keeps casting people who talk a big game about being ready for marriage, and then the moment real friction shows up, we see exactly how unprepared some of them actually are. Prince, in particular, is showing every classic sign of narcissistic patterns, the deflection, the victim mentality, the disrespect dressed up as honesty, and now allegations from his past that suggest this isn't a new pattern at all, but a well-worn one. I genuinely worry for his current wife, because the early episodes of a relationship are supposed to be the honeymoon phase, the easiest part, and if this is what easy looks like for them, I'm concerned about what happens when real pressure hits. On the flip side, I'm choosing to hold on to hope for a few of these pairings. Matidiso and Liba surprised me with how mature their planning conversations have been, even if his disappearing ex still needs serious work. Namsibo and Kuloni are young and rough around the edges, but there's real tenderness buried under the immaturity, and with some growth, I think they have a shot. Aubrey and Larenda are simply two strong personalities learning how to compromise, which is a completely normal newlywed struggle. And then we have our quiet, steady couple proving that sometimes the best television moments come from watching two people simply choose each other, calmly, every single day. As always, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me which couple you're rooting for, and more importantly, tell me if you agree that Prince is showing narcissistic red flags, or if you think I'm being too harsh on him this early in the season. Smash that like button if you enjoyed this recap, subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you all next week for another full breakdown of Married at First Sight Mzansi. Until then, take care of yourselves, and remember, communication is not optional in marriage, it's the whole foundation. See you soon.